Thank you. Near the beginning of my sophomore year of college, I was working on an assignment for my intermediate acting class that I will never forget. We were told to come up with a situation where a character, which we would then play, would have 2 minutes to perform a task that could not be accomplished in 2 minutes. An impossible task. And there was a twist. The character's life depended on successfully completing the task in the allotted amount of time. Do the impossible, your life depends on it. We were explicitly told not to rehearse the 2 minutes ahead of time. That was to be performed for the first time in class. However, we were to come up with all the details of our character and the particulars of the situation and bring any necessary props. But when it came time to perform, we would not provide any explanations. We wouldn't set the scene. We were simply to get up in front of our class, spend 2 minutes trying to do the impossible as if our life depended on it, and fail. And we were warned that these scenes could be difficult scenes to perform and difficult to watch. I imagine that this exercise would have made a lasting impression on me simply because of its intrinsic emotional intensity. But it sticks in my mind for another reason. You see, our class received this assignment September 10th, 2001. And the scenes were to be performed the next day. But of course, it didn't happen, because that morning, the terrorist attacks of September 11th shattered our understanding of the world. So we spent that class period that afternoon beginning to process our feelings and discuss whether we should do this exercise at all. Was it appropriate to put ourselves in these pretend life or death situations when the television and newspapers were filled with images of real people faced with the truly impossible, some of them choosing to jump out of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center? In the end, we felt we should do it. And over the next several classes, we did. It was hard to perform the scenes. It was harder still to watch, but we felt it was something we needed to do. Because these 2-minute life or death struggles to do the impossible were difficult moments, yes, but pure moments, cathartic moments. All of the prep work setting up these scenes, while necessary, were forgotten in the immediacy of our performances. Now, this exercise is part of the Meisner technique of acting. It's a technique designed to get actors out of their heads, to get them truly present in the moment, and to react authentically. I often think back on this exercise 22 years ago now, when I prepare to pray. Because on the face of it, prayer is an impossible task, and Jewish prayer in particular. At set times each day, whether you feel like it or not, you should pray to God. And not just any words, but these specific words in this book in an arcane Hebrew. And ideally, this should be done with at least 10 other people, with a leader, keeping everyone at the same pace. So we're reciting these words at a speed that is either too fast or too slow, but let's be real, it's too fast. And by doing this, we're supposed to be doing something of value. And like that theater exercise, prayer, this impossible task, is said to be a matter of life and death. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement in the 18th century, taught before a person should pray, That person should have such intensity of concentration that they are ready to die after saying just a few words. But this type of prayer might be understandable at particularly intense moments of our life. Imagine with me, an old person early in the morning looking out over what they had fought to protect, destroyed in fire and smoke. Imagine a person walking alone in a field in the late afternoon with their thoughts, wondering if anyone will ever truly see them. Imagine a young person having just left home and everything they've ever known in a dark, strange place, not knowing what lies ahead. Imagine a person desperately wanting to start a family, struggling with infertility, crying out with such intensity, those nearby think that person must be crazy or drunk. We can imagine these things. Maybe we can relate. Maybe we've been there. Maybe we know people who have. It was moments such as these that serve as the rabbinic model for prayer. The rabbis in the Talmud ask, what is the origin of these 3 daily prayer services? And one of the answers they give is that each service was created by one of the patriarchs during a critical moment in their life. Abraham, standing early in the morning, looking out over the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Isaac, alone in a field meditating, moments just before meeting Rebekah, the one he was destined to love. And Jacob, fleeing for his life from his brother Esau, coming to a place at night and finding ultimately that God was there. In fact, had been there the whole time, even though he had not known it. These were moments in the lives of our ancestors where life hung in the balance. And it is from the intensity of these moments that the 3 daily prayer services were said to be established. So having established when to pray, the rabbis wanted to know how to pray. And they looked to the story that we read in yesterday's Haftorah, with Hannah desperately pouring out her heart to God in the sanctuary of Shiloh, asking, she have a child. These moments, particularly intense. And these prayers were spontaneous. They were occasions where it was possible for our ancestors to pray as if their lives depended on it, because in a sense they did. But how do we today capture some of that intensity and make it part of our everyday prayers? I believe some of the tools that an actor uses to prepare a script, to prepare a role, can help us. For an actor encountering a script is faced with a similar dilemma to the one we face when we encounter a sidur or a machzor. How do we take these words that are not ours and make them our own? It's become a cliche that the first thing an actor wants to know is their motivation. What's my motivation? So what's our motivation when we pray? As the great first century scholar Rabbi Eliezer lay dying, his students implored him to share with them his wisdom for how to live a fulfilling life. And the final piece of advice he gave them: when you pray, know before whom you stand, for by doing that, you will merit life in the world to come. Jewish prayer, it's a tool, a technology, a discipline designed to regularly connect us to God, to the infinite, to know that we are standing before God. That could be the motivation. But what does that mean? What does that mean to connect with God? To connect with God is to connect with our understanding of the ultimate source of our values, that which is most important in our lives. And unless you're a nihilist, it is impossible to live a life without meaning. God is a name we have traditionally given to the source of that meaning, and prayer is a way to connect to that source. And it's essential to connect to that source regularly, to remain truly alive. And in prayer, Jewish prayer at least, we go a step further. God is not a mere abstraction of these ultimate values. God is not something. God is someone. A teacher of mine, Rabbi Daniel Goldfarb, once told me when he was preparing for his bar mitzvah, he thought he had the most amazing line in the Torah at the very beginning of his. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. And God spoke to Moses saying, that line comes again and again and again, but he thought, it's like, wow, I have that line. It's truly radical. We think about it. God spoke to a human being. God has a message for us. The most radical words in the Siddur, I believe, are also repeated so often that they often become invisible. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe. You, atah. We are addressing God in the same way we would address any person we might happen to know, any person we might happen to meet. So we are called not only to stand before our ultimate sense of meaning and values, all the things in life that are truly important, the things worthy of worship and service. Not just that, but we're called to address that source as you. We are declaring again and again and again that we are in a personal relationship with this divine you. Now, I don't know how many of you in this room really believe in a God that you can be in a relationship with. But for those who don't, what if you did? What if you tried that on, like an actor tries on a role, just for a moment? What if the source of all the values you hold dear, love, freedom, justice, creativity, I could go on. What if you could talk to the source of all those values? How would that change you? Maybe, hopefully, you're on board at this point. Give it a try. Trying to stand before the infinite, the source of values, act as if that infinite is a you that you can be in a relationship with. You could agree with all of that. You could still say to me, but Rabbi, why, when I'm standing before the source of all meaning and value, why do I need to say these words in this prayer book in a language I don't really understand? Good question. Important question. My answer might surprise you. Ultimately, I don't think you need to use the words of the Siddur. You can pray your own prayers. That's great. And if you do decide you want to pray the traditional prayers, you don't need to pray them in Hebrew. We have a nice translation in our books, and the rabbis were very clear. Almost everything is part of our prayer services today. The Shema, the Amidah, Birkat Hamazon, they can be said in any language. In fact, if you don't understand what you're saying, I think it's probably preferable to use that translation. So I'm not going to tell you that you need to pray the prayers as written in the Siddur, or that you need to pray in a minyan, but I'm going to tell you why I choose to. You see, the Siddur is our people's attempt to connect with the divine. It is the collected yearnings, its wisdom and art of countless generations. When we strive to connect with God using this book, we're not just connecting with God, we're connecting to our people across time and space. We connect to all other Jews in the world today who are also trying to pray with these words. And we're connecting to our ancestors who used these words or some of these words. And we're hoping to connect with our descendants who hopefully will use these words or some of these words too. We're connecting to God as Jews, using the words and the language of our people. So when we pray communally, we can see right away that we're part of something bigger, something that transcends us. We're not alone. When we pray as a community, we become more than the sum of our parts. A generation ago, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel said that to really pray as Jews, what we need is a sympathetic prayer book exegesis. The prayers we have before us are words that were left in response to intense spiritual feelings. We need to find a way to recreate those experiences, to bring those texts back to life. We need to start with observations, getting into the world of these texts. We need to use our imaginations, try on the role, do some acting. And finally, we need to reflect on those experiences, see what worked, see where we can grow, and start the cycle over and over and over. We need to sympathize with the prayers. We need to, in a sense, become the prayers. The psalmist wrote a line that we said today before we took the Torah out of the ark. Ve'ani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon. And the line is often translated as, and as for me, may my prayer come before you at a favorable time. This is an accurate translation, but we can also translate it as, at the right time, I am my prayer to you, Adonai. At the right time. Jewish prayer is a discipline. This is day 2 of Rosh Hashana, I don't need to tell you that. We say the prayers day in and day out, and on these high holy days, we have even more of them. A student of mine once was talking to me about the repetitive nature of Jewish prayer, and he said, if we're saying the same thing so often, it either means you really believe it, or maybe it means you're trying to convince yourself of it. I think we're often trying to convince ourselves. But that's not a bad thing. The words are hard. We're not going to feel them every time. I don't feel them every time, but we place them. We place these words upon our hearts. Upon our hearts. The Kotzker Rebbe says we place them on our hearts because when the moment is right and our hearts are breaking, either from joy or from sadness, when our hearts are breaking, the words are there already, ready to sink in. We become the prayers. They help us navigate in the world when we need them. I've been practicing traditional Jewish prayer for some time, and there are moments where the time has been right, where the words sink into my heart, where I become the prayer. There are times I become this line from the daily morning liturgy, Ashreinu matov chelkenu umanayim goralenu. Happy are we. How good is our portion, how lovely our fate. I say these words every morning. And in moments of great joy, they are me. When each of my children were born, these words meant something to me they hadn't meant before. Happy are we. How good is our portion, how lovely our fate. But these words are me at other times. When the world seems to be falling apart. When I wake up, it seems like almost every day now, when I wake up to the radio telling me of a mass shooting, of earthquakes, of fires, of floods, when things seem hopeless, I get up and I do the impossible. I say these words. Happy are we. How good is our portion. How lovely our fate. And it might be a scream to that divine you, a cry, a protest, but it becomes me. And I know that I cannot give in to despair. Happy are we. How good is our portion. How lovely our fate. Sometimes we say things over and over because we need to convince ourselves. But when we convince ourselves, it might just become true. So I want to challenge all of us during this high holy day season and beyond. What will happen if we become not just a community of prayers, but a community of prayers? What do we want to see in the world? Can we articulate it? Can we become it? So I want us to actually try. I want us to try. There's another Meisner exercise that he called the word repetition game. It was designed to create a connection between actors by ensuring that they are actively listening to one another. It gets them out of their heads and into a place where they can truly listen and then truly respond authentically to their fellow actors and the situation. So in this game, two actors will face one another, and one will say a short line, an observation, which the other person will then repeat. And they go back and forth, repeating the same line over and over. For example, you're looking at me, you're looking at me, you're looking at me, you're looking at me. Or, I love you, I love you. By saying the words over and over, the actor is free to not focus on the words per se, but the emotion underneath. You were looking at me. I love you. The way we say it changes. What are we really feeling? Both their feelings and their partner's feelings. In a more advanced version, the partners no longer copy each other exactly, but rather they mirror, they reflect each other. So I'm looking at you, the response is, you're looking at me. I love you becomes, you love me. It can happen many different ways. I love you, you love me. I love you, you love me. We focus on the repetition. Repeating the words gets us, we can do that with our traditional prayers. Rosh Hashana is the day we crown God as Melech HaOlam, ruler of the universe. That's the major theme of this holy day, as we will elaborate in the Malchiyot section of Musaf in just a few minutes. There's going to be a lot of words. It's going to be a lot of words. But let's focus on two. Let's focus on two right now. Words that we say over and over again, not just on the prayers of this day, but the prayers every day. Melech HaOlam, ruler of the universe. Say it. Melech HaOlam. So I invite you to do this exercise for a minute. Melech HaOlam. Melech HaOlam. Melech HaOlam. Melech HaOlam. Do we hear a response? This fall, I'll be offering a series of adult education classes that I've developed that use theater techniques like this one and others that I believe can help us approach prayer. I hope to see a lot of you there. Because really, this is the task before us. Let us come together and try the impossible. Let us stand before the infinite source and call it you. Let us attempt to pray as if our lives depended on it. Let us become our prayers. Shana Tova.